Welcome to Forensic Friday, where I tell you one true crime case that was solved using forensic science, all while doing, that's right, my makeup. Lucy, get your tail out of the way, please. Thank you. Today's video will be featuring the Tim Burton and Colourpop collaborations. I just said a lot of stuff. The Nightmare Before Christmas collaboration palette. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited, you guys. I also picked up the Zero sponge because it has zero on it, so why not? And I picked up the white felt tip eyeliner. Guys, I have no idea what I'm gonna do with the white eyeliner. I just got it because I don't own any white eyeliners and I thought it would be interesting to maybe try to do a look in the future with, but I don't think I'm gonna use it in this look today, but who knows, who knows? Anything can happen here with me. You guys already know that. All of the other products I'm using in this video will be linked in the description below. Please read the disclaimer. I am not a professional makeup artist, nor am I a professional forensic pathologist. I'm just the average girl at home like you, playing in my makeup, doing my nails sometimes, and talking about true crime. So if that's something that you're into, then you're more than welcome to stick around and hit that subscribe button. Also, a quick reminder, the comment section is a privilege. Don't fuck it up. Now let's get into today's case. Detective Inspector Lucy has joined us, per usual. So this all takes place in Easton, Northampton County in Pennsylvania in the early mornings on June 15th, 2000. 19-year-old Devon Guzman was living with her roommate, Keary Renner. They were roommates that had started dating, like they had a thing going on. On the night of June 14th, 2000, the two of them had gotten to a really bad argument. The two girls were so upset that it led to a physical altercation, like they were hitting each other. This is the one thing that y'all are gonna have to explain to me because I don't get it, and maybe I don't even need to get it. Maybe it's not even, it's like pointless. But is it okay for same-sex relationships to like hit each other, to get into a physical altercation? Because with a lot of my gay friends, my gay guy friends, they like physically hit their boyfriends. Like when they get into a fight, it's not just like a regular fight, like an argument. They physically hit, and it seems to be like okay, because it's never okay, let's just get that straight. But it seems like it's more acceptable to get into a physical altercation with your partner if you're in a same-sex relationship. Is that a thing? Is that okay? I don't know, I don't think so. So the two of them were really upset and they got into this physical altercation, and Devin ended up leaving the apartment because, you know, she was so upset with Karen. Is it her name, Karen? I think it's Carrie. I might have said Karen. Girl, she probably is a Karen too, who knows. Friends and family describe Devin and Carrie's relationship as a very tumultuous one. They say that Carrie was the troublemaker, like that's how they described her. Like Devin's father did not like Carrie. He felt like Carrie was a troublemaker, that she always had an attitude. She was always starting fights. He just didn't think that Carrie was good for his daughter, to be honest. He didn't think she was good enough. But according to Carrie, she really loved Devin. She says that she was so in love with Devin that the two of them were in love. So I don't know why y'all hitting each other, like why? So she left the apartment and never returned. Karen, if I don't stop calling this girl Karen, Carrie, being upset and worried, she began to call family members and friends looking for Devin. She called up a friend of Devin's. Her name was Michelle. She knew that Devin and Michelle were really close, so she called her up. So she asked Michelle, like, look, is Devin with you? Because we got into an argument and she never returned home last night. And Michelle was like, no, she's not. And Michelle, being worried as well, was like, you know, we need to go drive around and look for her because This is unlike Devin. She would never just like disappear from the like on the both of us. Like, she would never do that. We'll talk about Michelle in a minute, okay? They went driving around and like driving around the neighborhood looking for, you know, Devin. And they came across this like abandoned lot where they found Devin's car sitting. They didn't see anybody sitting in the front driver's seat. The car was parked and it was turned off, so it didn't appear that anyone was in the vehicle at first. And so they pulled up closer to the car, and Keary got out and she started to peer inside of the car windows, trying to see if Devin was in there. And she looked through the back window, and that is when she saw Devin's lifeless body laying in the back seat. And she had her coat pulled over her body, like pulled over her head. And at first, you know, she opened the door. She thought Devin may have just been sleeping in the car for whatever reason, I don't know. So she opened the back doors to the car and she, you know, tried to wake Devin up. That is when she realized that Devin was not sleeping. Devin was dead. That is traumatizing, to say the least. So she said that Devin's face was pale and her lips were blue. But at that point, it still didn't like sink into her that Devin was obviously like she was gone. And she just kept trying to wake her up, like, you know, thinking like, oh my God. And the moment she realized she's not waking up, her lips are blue, her face is pale, she started putting the pieces together. Then she discovered that Devin had an injury to her throat. And that is when it became clear to her that Devin was obviously not alive anymore and they needed to call the police. So her and Michelle calls the police. The police comes down there. So they block the entire scene off, including Michelle's vehicle that Keary and Michelle arrived in. They block everything off. Nobody's leaving, okay? Keary is hysterical. She is just screaming and, you know, freaking out about what happened. So the coroner found that Devin had suffered a severe laceration to her throat. They also found an empty syringe in her waistband, but a toxicology report that was done showed that Devin had no drugs in her system. I'm sorry, everyone's coming out today. Police wasn't really sure what this syringe had to do with anything, so they were like, wait a minute. 1 + 1 ain't equaling 2, so now we gotta figure out what to do. You know what I mean? They just thought that there was something a little more sinister going on, and I agree with them. There was also a knife found in Devin's hand she had been holding on to when she died, but there was no blood on the knife. When compared to the laceration in her throat, the knife did not match, so that was not the murder weapon. So police was just like, something's just not right. You know, something's not right. Like, if she committed suicide by slitting her own throat, then where was the blood that should have been on the knife and also on her hands? As well as, why didn't that knife match the laceration to her throat? The lack of blood at the seam, are we sewing today? No, scene, sorry. The lack of blood at the scene, along with the grass stains and dirt stains on the bottom of Devin's body, led police to confirm what they already believed. That was not the original place that Devin had been killed, that it had been a different location and her body had been brought back and planted there in her car. It was apparent to them that this was a secondary crime scene. They also noticed that Devin had been covered with her own jacket, which told them that it had to have been someone who knew her, that had a personal relationship with her. So they started to investigate the people that were the closest to her, and obviously, you guys already know, the significant other usually is the first one that investigators want to rule out. So of course, her girlfriend, Keary Renner, became investigators' prime suspect in the case. And they started to question her and ask her, you know, what was the relationship like. They questioned friends and family members of Devin and the two just to find out, you know, how the couple's relationship was. And I mean, they were pretty dead set on Keary being the one to have done this. According to Keary, they kind of just like pinned it on her, and it wasn't really a process of elimination. It was more like a, we know you effing did it and we're gonna figure it out, bitch. So just letting you know, you can pretend like you didn't, but we believe you did, kind of thing. When they questioned Keary about her relationship with Devin, she told them that her and Devin were in love. Yes, they did fight the night before, and they would oftentimes get into really heated arguments, but that didn't make their love any less real. So the apartment that the girls lived in was above a bar. I'm not sure if the two girls worked at the bar or if one of them worked at the bar, but yeah, they were living in this apartment above a bar, and the people in the bar could hear them fighting. So someone in the bar went up to go and check on them, and when he went up there, he heard them fighting so bad that he just returned back downstairs to his manager and told him like, hey boss, like the girls are up there fighting, you know? According to Keary, she admitted to police that her and Devin's relationship was like this. It was out of the ordinary, she called it. And yeah, I would say they would punch each other, slap each other, kick each other, pull each other's hair out. She said that Devin at one point pulled her hair out or something like that. It was unusual, but they would always come back to this loving state together, I guess. I don't know, because if somebody pulling out my hair, no ma'am, that's not happening. Like, we're not touching each other like that. Like, not at all, not in the least bit. I'm so sensitive to that stuff. Like, she also said that oftentimes they would hit each other with bottles and pour alcohol on each other. I'm like, girl, really? Why though? Like, that's too much. Keary denied having anything to do with Devin's murder, and she said that they, you know, although they got into that argument, Devin did leave after the argument late that night, and she did not see her again. So of course, investigators are kind of thinking, okay, these two have a history of abuse between the two of them. Maybe the situation escalated to a point where it was out of control and Keary accidentally did something to Devin and she's trying to cover it up. They weren't really sure, so forensic scientists decided to take a closer look into the girls' apartments. So at this time, everybody in Devin's family was convinced that Keary did it. They felt like she was abusive. In fact, her father actually described Keary as the abusive one. In the girls' apartment, in their shower stall, the investigators found Devin's car mat. What was a car mat doing in the shower anyway? I don't get it. Did she just bring the car mat back to the shower? It's kind of strange. It had been recently like washed or rinsed off. So forensic scientists removed the mat and they sprayed luminol on the floor of the shower, and it glowed, which you guys already know means traces of blood. The test revealed that the blood in the shower was Devin's blood. So investigators were trying to figure out, was Devin killed in the shower and then brought out to the car? And that's how her blood got in there, and how there was no blood in the vehicle? Because that's really the only thing that makes sense, right? Police brought in Keary for questioning and they gave her a lie detector test, and it actually came back inconclusive. So they wasn't able to tell if she was telling the truth or not, but they felt that she was a viable suspect. So even though they didn't have much on Keary, they didn't want to rule her out because they just felt like, you know, there was too many signs leading to her, considering the fact that her and Devin had gotten into an altercation, a physical altercation the night before. It just made sense. So they really couldn't rule her out. Excuse me, I'm doing my eyebrows, Biss. How am I gonna do my eyebrows if you keep hitting my elbows? Does anybody else's cat like nudges them when they want them to like rub them? She is incredibly like needy. You know, Keary, she was just upset because she felt like she didn't do it, and she knew that the police believed that she did. With further investigation into Devin's background, police found that she actually had another lover, an older woman named Michelle Hetzel. In fact, her and Michelle had just recently returned from a vacation in the Virgin Islands, where, get this you guys, the two of them decided to run off and get married. That's right, they decided to get married. And you're probably like, okay, that's not too terrible. Well, Michelle was also married already to another guy. Michelle, girl, what you doing? What you out here doing? Michelle's husband's name was Brandon Bloss, and he wasn't too thrilled when he found out that the two of them had gotten married. Devin had been telling her family and friends that she was so excited that her and Michelle had made this big commitment together, and they had got married. Like, what the fuck? You know, I don't know what Devin was thinking. Maybe she was thinking that this woman was gonna leave her husband and her family and be with her, but I mean, listen, we already got a problem. We already got a problem up front because, homegirls, you already married, okay? You already married to a man, and you getting married to me? We already got an issue. We already have an issue, because if you're doing that with him, you're probably gonna do that with me. Like, no, that's enough. But you guys, you know what? We have to remember that Devin was only 19 at the time that this was all happening. So I feel like this older woman, Michelle, kind of took advantage of her. As you can imagine, this was causing a lot of issues between Michelle and her husband, Brandon, and also a lot of issues between Brandon and Devin. The four of them, for the most part, was always at odds with one another. As you can imagine, when you bring too many people into the situation, this is what happens, more problems. If you can't even get along with one other person, what makes you think that your relationship is gonna be any better, or you can get along with 2 or 3 other people if you add another person? Guys, let's just try to get loving one person down first, okay? Before we skip to like 2s, 3s, and 4s and multiples, okay? It's just not a good idea, especially when you're adding people without the consent of the other parties that are involved. So police traced Devin's steps that night. They found out that after Devin had gotten into a fight with Keary, she went over to Michelle and Brandon's house. I don't know why. I guess she thought that would be like a better situation. I don't know. But anyway, she showed up at Michelle and Brandon's house around midnight that night. One of the neighbors actually saw them that night because he had been woken up from hearing, you know, loud noises and screaming and people like fighting. So he looked out of his window and he saw what he now knows to be Devin standing on the doorstep of Brandon and Michelle's house. He said that he saw 2 people inside the house and Devin on the doorstep, and they were all arguing back and forth. And he said at some point they walked back into the house. Okay, you guys, guess what it's time for? Now it's time to go into the palette. But anyway, back to the story. Forensic scientists sprayed the inside of the couple's home with fluorescein, which is very, very similar to luminol in the sense that it glows when it comes into contact with blood. So basically, they are checking the entire home for blood, and they found nothing. Like, they literally came up with absolutely nothing in the home. They did find grass stains and dirt on Devin's clothing, so they figured, why not check the backyard? Perhaps there's something there. They decided to spray items in the couple's backyard with fluorescein. They found tiny traces of blood on the garden hose nozzle, as well as on a pool cover. Unfortunately, the blood they found could not be tested for DNA because it had been washed off. It was just not enough to test with. They also found in the couple's home a pair of jeans in the washing machine, and the jeans were still wet. They were just like sitting in the washer. And when they tested the jeans, it came back positive for blood. Because the jeans had set in the water in the washer for so long, it had been diluted, and it was pretty much impossible for them to run any test and get anything back from that blood either. But then in the pocket of the jeans, they found a cap to a syringe needle. If you guys remember, in Devin's waistband, she had a needle, a syringe needle. And so this kind of gave police an idea, like, could this be the cap to that syringe needle? What are the odds that a syringe needle cap was in those jeans? And it just so happened that Devin had a syringe needle on her when she was found. I don't know. I mean, I guess it could be a coincidence, but not likely. Then they found out that Michelle actually worked for a physician in a physician's office where she could have had access to those types of syringes. So now, instead of one suspect, police were looking at 3 different suspects in the murder of Devon Guzman, and they all had motive. They had opportunity to commit the crime. Come to find out, Devin's father knew that Devin was seeing 2 different women, and he was just like, oh, Keary's the bad one and Michelle is the sweet one. So when the investigators talked to, Michelle and her husband, Brandon, they did admit to police that Devin had come to visit them that night, but they said that she had left an hour later and, she was just fine when she left their house. Police did not believe that Devin ever left the home alive. That was the last place Devin was seen alive. No one had seen her after that. Police decided to surveillance Brandon and Michelle's home, and one night the officers saw Brandon bring out this bag of trash. On a hunch, one of the officers confiscated the trash that Brandon had set outside, and good thing he did, because inside of the trash bags he found a large medical gauze, something that would be used to cover an open wound. And so he took it in to be tested. When they were studying the gauze, they could see the outline of the person's wound on the gauze. You know how like when, this is kind of gross, but you know how like when your like sore starts to like, bleed and pus and stuff, it kind of creates a pattern from where the wound is. So they saw this pattern on the gauze, and it appeared to be a bite mark. Forensic scientists examined the gauze with alternate light sources. The alternate light sources work particularly good because if you look at something under just white light, it may not show up, but if you put it under a different lighting source, it sometimes shows up. So when they put the gauze underneath the alternate light source, it made an impression, and it was clear for them to see the design, and it was an outline of like a mouth. Now, unless Michelle and Brandon is into some weird sexual biting thing, okay, which they might be, forensic scientists told investigators that it was very possible that this was definitely a bite mark. With this new information, police were able to get a warrant to inspect Brandon's body. And when they brought him in, on his left forearm, they found a wound that was like a fresh bite wound, but they weren't sure who had bit Brandon. So investigators brought in a forensic odontologist, and he specialized in dentistry. Police had to figure out whose bite mark this was, and the only way they could do that was to get a dental impression and then compare it to Devin's dental impression. So the medical examiner ordered Devin's body to be exhumed for an impression of her bite mark. The forensic pathologist took a cast of Devin's teeth, just like, they would if you go to a dentist and you're getting braces, or if you're getting like a tooth implant, they will kind of take a cast of your teeth so that they have a mold. to work with, and this is exactly what they did with Devin's teeth. Then they scanned the cast into the computer, and using a process called hollow volume overlay, the forensic scientists superimposed computer-generated hollow outline of Devin's teeth over a scale photograph of Brandon's bite mark. And what do you know? The outer rim of Brandon's bite mark matched the outer rim of Devin's cast, meaning Devin bit Brandon. But although the bite marks were consistent, this was just proof that they may have gotten into a fight, but it wasn't proof that he murdered her. So investigators needed to dig a little deeper. But then police realized that they may have had another clue to what took place that night. They had Michelle's car in their impound. They had actually taken it in as part of the crime scene, because when Michelle and Keary arrived at the crime scene, they parked so close to Devin's car that police considered both cars part of the crime scene and took them both in to the station for evidence. So they were still holding on to a piece of information that could possibly lead to solving this case. So in the trunk, they found Brandon's clothing. They also found a pair of rubber gloves. And it wasn't just like, you know, a shirt or, you know, a pair of shoes. It was like a full-blown outfit. I mean, they found his pants, they found his sweatshirt, they found his shoes, his socks were in there, and even his underwear. And police thought this was especially odd because it appeared like whatever happened, he had undressed completely wherever he was, including his underwear, and put it in the bag and put it in her car. Like the entire outfit was in the car. I mean, that is pretty odd. Most people aren't, if they're changing from here to there, they're not gonna take off their underwear usually. So, but I mean, you never know. We got some special people out here, okay? So, I'm like 100% positive that this one is backwards. Brandon and Michelle were both arrested and charged with first-degree murder in the death of Devon Guzman. Police did not believe that Keary had anything to do with it. They believed that she was just an innocent person on the side, but I'm not so sure. These people are all caught up and triangled up. Prosecutors believe that both Michelle and Brandon was responsible for the death of Devin. They believe that Brandon's motive for the murder was a clear motive. Obviously, his wife is having an affair with this other woman. She has gone off and gotten married to her, and while still being married to him without him knowing about it. So this was clearly a motive. And for Michelle, prosecutors argued that she was jealous of Devin's continued relationship with Keary Renner, and she wanted Devin to herself. She didn't want Devin to be living with Keary. However, she was still living with her husband while marrying Devin. Funny how that works. Investigators also may have found an additional financial motive. You see, when Michelle took Devin to the Virgin Islands to get married, she charged all of that onto her husband Brandon's credit card. Not very bright, are we, Michelle? How you gonna go to the Virgin Islands? You ain't even a virgin, girl. You ain't even a virgin. She charged the hotel rooms. She charged all of the things that they were doing, the activities they were doing. She even charged their wedding rings, her and Devin's wedding rings, onto his credit card. Like, are you mind-blowing? Like, you girl, you got some cojones. You got some real balls to do something like that. Literally, it all added up to about $7,000. She didn't have a job. She couldn't even keep a job. Prosecutors did believe that the murder was premeditated. They found phone records that showed either Michelle or Brandon had called Devin on the night of the murder, and God knows what they said. Maybe they told her to meet them at the house for whatever reason. Eventually, during the trial, Michelle and Brandon turned on each other, at both accusing each other of Devin's murder, saying that they were not the ones to, you know, actually stab her. Brandon was saying that Michelle stabbed her. Michelle was saying that Brandon stabbed her. Why am I not surprised? Prosecutors brought to the stand an additional witness who said that just a few days prior, about a month prior to Devin's murder, that Michelle solicited him to take out Devin or kill Devin in exchange for money, sex, or both. Wow. Thanks to forensic science and some good police work, Brandon Bloss and Michelle Hetzler were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. What did you guys think about this case and my makeup look? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you like videos like these, check out my last episode. I'll leave a link on the screen right here or right here. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. Please share because it really helps me out. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.